So let's get into the other group that we got to see some meetings with there, and that's the QBs. The QBs came into East Rutherford. There they are, the big three that we got to see on this. Drake Maye, North Carolina, Jayden Daniels at LSU, and J.J. McCarthy at Michigan. Now, Caleb Williams was not a part of this. And it seemed pretty obvious early on that the Giants knew they had not a shot in hell of getting Caleb Williams. The Bears were not giving up that pick. The Bears were not going to shy away from Caleb Williams. Like, that was pretty obvious from the get-go. So that's why he wasn't a part of that. They did the one combine interview with him, but that was probably the extent of their meetings. So they even said on the thing, that little intro, they said right then and there, Bears are going to take Caleb Williams number one, and so they won't trade. They said that the Commanders would never make a move within the division. And then the Patriots are talked about as a possible trade partner. Assistant GM Brandon Brown talks about not wanting to be so high next year. Preaching to the choir. We're tired of being a high draft pick ourselves.
Yeah.
But then they show J.J. McCarthy and Drake Maye in a meeting room with the whiteboard. I got to say, I thought J.J. McCarthy was not visible in this episode a lot at all. And that seemed to kind of solidify what you and I talked about during the draft season, where we thought the whole thing was a smokescreen. I think it's pretty obvious that was a smokescreen.
Smokescreen.
Because you saw him on camera once or twice. He came in for a visit, but you really didn't see a lot of J.J. McCarthy. You didn't hear them talking even a lot about J.J. McCarthy.
No.
I really think that was them doing their homework. Now, I will say this. What I thought was very interesting is, besides when they had a little montage of them flying around the country to see people, you saw them briefly talking to Michael Penix Jr. Otherwise, there was no Penix in this whole thing.
Were we wrong? Were the groups wrong?
Well, listen, I'm not saying we were wrong, because we never said the Giants would target Michael Penix Jr. What I said is he was a highly ranked quarterback for me, and I thought he's going to be good in the NFL. So I think we're still safe in what we said.
Well,
we were hoping the Giants were interested because we liked him, but we'll see what happens in the Falcons in the next 7 years when he finally gets a chance to start at the age of 35.
That's what I say. Shortest, longest career ever.
Exactly. Anyway, they then cut to Jayden Daniels having a meeting with Schoen and Daboll in Shane's office. Daboll asked him multiple times if he wanted to be the quarterback for the New York Giants, and he says yes each time. Daboll talks about important to him that he wants to have people that want to be there, which makes sense, obviously, especially when they're drafting someone and they don't necessarily get to choose where they want to go. You don't want to draft somebody who doesn't really want to be there.
No.
It's not the best scenario. Ask Eli Manning about him in San Diego. We'll get to that a little bit later.
San Diego.
But yeah, so he then asked him if he had his plays, and Daniel says he'll draw all three of the plays he had on the whiteboard. So basically, it seems that the quarterbacks, basically what we've gathered of this episode here, the quarterbacks were given multiple plays from either the offense or plays that they just made up for this occasion, and gave them to the three quarterbacks and asked them to be ready to basically write it down on the whiteboard when they got there and discuss the play and discuss who is who and what their responsibilities are and what they're going to do, basically. So it was interesting. And I wonder how far in advance they were given that. Was that like that morning? Did they give a piece of paper and say, here you go, we'll talk about this in a couple hours? Or did they email it like a week beforehand? Like, I just don't know that part of it. I'm kind of curious on that. But it's a nice way of showing A, their memory skills, B, their understanding of football plays. It's a nice way of doing it. And I wonder if all teams do it. Again, that's part of the fun of the show, is we're getting to see stuff we don't usually get to see.
Yeah.
I mean, did any of you all have any idea what happens during a top 30 visit with a quarterback? Let's be honest. We've never been in the room for one. We've never seen one. It's an interesting thing to see there at that point. But yeah, then it cuts to a meeting in the draft room, and Shane asked Daboll if he would trade up for Jayden Daniels, and Daboll pretty quickly to say yes. Then it cuts and moves over to Drake Maye showing his cadence in the meeting room there as he snaps the ball. Then back to the meeting, and Mike Kafka makes a slight appearance there and calls Maye a guy you can believe in. So Shane then says in the meeting that they've invested in Daniel Jones and hopefully the line can stay healthy, but that the team is missing a number one wide receiver. And I kind of get the vibe that, like, they're okay. They were okay with Maye or Daniels, but they didn't really have any interest in McCarthy. Because you notice that they didn't even ask, would you want to take McCarthy at 6 if he's available? That never came up this entire show.
No.
Not once did that question get asked. I think they were okay with either one. I think, people thought that, like, there was a bromance going on between Brian Daboll and Drake Maye at the Combine. And we talked about Jayden Daniels didn't necessarily look the best at that Combine interview. But Daboll seemed to like him some Jayden Daniels in that. He definitely did. Now, they didn't ask the question if you would trade it for Drake Maye. I would have been curious if they asked that question as a follow-up. I would have loved to see the answer in that. Because I'd love to see where their hierarchy of these quarterbacks were. But it was pretty obvious that Drake Maye, Jayden Daniels, both those they were okay with, but they weren't okay with anybody else past that point. Brian Daboll then pulls out his cell phone at that point. Basically talks about the last few years, 5 of the 8 quarterbacks taken in the first round were busts. Then they talk all about quarterback busts, and they list all the quarterbacks in the last decade in the first, and most of them were busts. They labeled them the bust red and the wins blue. Interesting, they labeled Daniel Jones blue. If you actually watched that thing and looked, I looked because I saw him on the list, and I was curious to see what color they give him. And I'm wondering, is it they're more like talking about, hey, this guy's still with the same team who drafted him? And you could give him that, but I don't know if you would, if it's safe to say that Daniel Jones is a winning draft pick at this point.
Yeah. You can also teeter the line. You can also play devil's advocate because he's.
Oh, listen, we can always play devil's advocate. But if the queen of ball should be the king, like, it is what it is at this point. There are quarterbacks who have succeeded. We talked about it before. Joe Burrow, bad offensive line. He still succeeds. But like I said, I just look at that and go, I thought it was interesting they did that. But yeah, if you look at that list, they were like all red. It was like a whole bunch of red guys. A whole bunch of red.
Yeah.
Seeing
red again.
Hits back home to the fact that you don't have to go ahead and move up for a quarterback. If you don't believe in a quarterback, that's a dumb move to make. It's just not there, sometimes, and you just don't want to go ahead and fight for it. If you look at some of the best guys out there, Lamar Jackson was I believe the last pick in the first round. Josh Allen was like the last quarterback. It was like the third quarterback taken in that draft. Dak Prescott, I hate to say it this way, but he's not a bad quarterback, guys. Not a great one. He can't win big games, but he's not a bad quarterback. Let's be honest, we would take him over Daniel Jones in a heartbeat. 4th round pick. Jalen Hurts, 2nd round pick. And I'm not a huge fan of him. I know a lot of other people are. Brock Purdy, 7th round pick. Kirk Cousins, I believe, was a 4th round pick. Geno Smith was a 2nd round pick. Derek Carr was a 2nd round pick. Just saying, like, you don't necessarily have to go ahead and get a top 10 pick to get a good quarterback. So that's what they were talking about. And they kind of seem to be nervous about if you give up all these picks for one of these guys and they don't pan out. That's not going to be good for your franchise long term.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
If you like that clip, then you will love the full episodes too. Find us on your favorite podcast app and look for us on all your favorite social media platforms.
Enter to win a Daniel Jones signed jersey. Simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@2giantgoofballs, and email a screenshot to 2giantgoofballs@mail.com to enter. Only one submission allowed per subscriber. Monthly subscribers at buymeacoffee.com/2giantgoofballs will get an additional 2 entries. Contest ends when the channel reaches 1,000 subscribers. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. This contest is not affiliated with the NFL, New York Giants, Daniel Jones, or any other person or company besides the 2 Giant Goofball podcast. Good luck to everyone.
Thanks so much.
Please, I'm begging you. Please.